Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. Rachel had always been good at making me feel like I wasn't enough. Not in a loud, obvious way. No screaming fights, no blatant insults. She did it in the little things. The size of disappointment when I didn't understand one of her work stories. The way she corrected me in front of her friends, like I was a child who needed guidance. The way she looked at me sometimes, like she was waiting for me to be more. I used to think it was just her personality, that she was ambitious, that she held people to high standards, and that maybe, just maybe, I needed to be better. But over time, those small slights became heavier. It was at her company's annual gala when I realized just how little respect she had for me. The ballroom was packed with New Orleans executives, marketing professionals, and business owners. Exactly the kind of high-achieving crowd Rachel thrived in. She moved through the room like she owned it, flashing that practiced smile, shaking hands, laughing a little too loud at jokes that weren't funny. I stood beside her, playing my usual role as the supportive husband. I had dressed the part, tailored suit, polished shoes, but I still felt out of place. Rachel's boss, a sharp-eyed woman in a sleek black dress, clinked her glass with a spoon, signaling for everyone's attention. Before we wrap up tonight, she announced, I just want to acknowledge someone who has been the driving force behind this team's success. Rachel, stand up. Applause filled the room as Rachel grinned, giving a small wave. Her boss continued, and of course, let's not forget the person who supports her behind the scenes. She turned toward me with a knowing smile. Ethan, stand up. I hesitated, caught off guard. The applause continued, polite but restrained. Rachel laughed, shaking her head. Oh, Ethan? He just shows up for the free drinks. The room burst into laughter. I forced a smile, heat creeping on my neck. Rachel's boss chuckled. I'm sure he does more than that. Rachel shrugged, still smiling. Let's just say I handle the career moves in our marriage. More laughter. I sat down before anyone could notice my clenched fists. Rachel didn't even look at me. She was too busy soaking in the attention. I spent the rest of the night replaying that moment over and over in my head. She hadn't said anything outright cruel. She hadn't insulted me. But she had made it clear, in front of her entire company, exactly how she saw me. Not as a partner, as an afterthought. I had let her get away with it for too long. That was about to change. I spent the next few days trying to shake the feeling that had settled deep in my chest. The weight of that night at the gala, the laughter, the way Rachel had dismissed me so easily, it wasn't going away. I had swallowed my pride for years, convinced myself that she didn't mean anything by it, that I was just reading too much into things. But I wasn't imagining it. Rachel had no respect for me. And worse, she didn't even try to hide it. It wasn't just the gala. It was everything. Like the way she always forgot to introduce me at her work events, leaving me standing there awkwardly while she basked in the attention. Or the way she rolled her eyes when I talked about my day, barely listening while scrolling through her phone. Or how she spoke about me to her friends. That became painfully obvious at a dinner party a few nights later. We were at a restaurant, a sleek, modern place Rachel had picked. One of those spots where the menu had no prices and the waiters refilled your water after every sip. It was Rachel's usual crowd. Her coworkers, a few industry friends, and, of course, her best friend, Megan. I liked Megan. She was sharp, funny, and, unlike Rachel, she actually acknowledged my existence. The night started off fine, light conversation, a few drinks. But then the joke started. One of Rachel's coworkers, a guy named Derek, leaned back in his chair and smirked. So, Ethan, what's it like being married to the most powerful woman in the room? I smiled, playing along. Pretty great, actually. Rachel laughed. Oh, come on. You love that I handle everything. Derek raised an eyebrow. Everything. Rachel smirked, twirling her wine glass. Let's just say, if it weren't for me, Ethan would probably forget to pay the bills. The table laughed. I kept my face neutral, even as my stomach tightened. Megan shot me a quick look, something unreadable in her eyes. But Rachel was still going. He's too nice to be cutthroat in his field, she continued. Which, honestly, is kind of adorable. Like a golden retriever trying to negotiate a contract. Derek grinned. So what you're saying is, You were the pants. Rachel shrugged, sipping her wine. Let's just say Ethan prefers to sit in the passenger seat. More laughter. I clenched my jaw, forcing a smile. I had always let this slide. Always laughed it off, played the role of the easygoing husband who didn't mind being the joke. But tonight it felt different. Maybe because now I knew the truth. Rachel wanted me to be small. She needed to feel like she was the star of her marriage, the one carrying all the weight, the one who was too good for a guy like me. I set my drink down carefully. Funny, I said, keeping my voice light, because last time I checked, I was the one who got us out of your tax mess last year. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. I leaned back, mirroring Derek's smirk. Oh, and who negotiated our mortgage rate down? Right me. But sure, Rachel. You handle everything. The table went quiet. Rachel let out a small, forced laugh. Okay, relax. No need to get defensive. I tilted my head. Defensive? I thought we were just joking. Her smile faltered. For the first time in a long time, she didn't have control of the conversation. Megan hid a smirk behind her drink. Rachel set her wine down, her fingers tightening around the stem. You're being weird. No, I said calmly. I'm just done playing along. She narrowed her eyes, but I saw it. The flicker of something uneasy behind them. Good. For years, I had let her set the rules, let her chip away at my confidence while making herself look stronger. But things were changing. Rachel just didn't know it yet. Rachel barely spoke to me on the drive home. She kept her arms crossed, staring out the window, her jaw tight. Normally, I'd be the first to try and smooth things over, to ask what was wrong, to play peacemaker even when I wasn't the one who started the fight. But not tonight. Tonight, I let the silence stretch between us, thick and heavy. She was angry, but not because I had embarrassed her. She was angry because for the first time, I had refused to play my role. When we got home, she kicked off her heels, tossed her purse onto the counter, and turned to me with narrowed eyes. What was that? I shrugged. What was what? She scoffed. You know what? You were being weird tonight. I let out a short laugh. Weird? Because I didn't let you humiliate me for once. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. It was just banter. Right? I said, nodding slowly. Just like it was banter when you made me look like a fool at the gala, or when you tell people I'm helpless without you. Her lips pressed into a thin line. You're overreacting. There it was. The usual dismissal. The thing she always did to make me second-guess myself. Not this time. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. No, Rachel. I'm waking up. Her eyes flickered, but she masked it quickly, crossing her arms tighter. What does that even mean? I stared at her, really stared, taking in the woman I'd spent years trying to make happy. The woman who'd spent just as long making me feel like I wasn't enough. And suddenly, I wondered why I had ever tried so hard in the first place. It wasn't worth it. She wasn't worth it. I turned and walked upstairs without another word, leaving her standing in the kitchen. The next morning, I decided to clean up the house, more for myself than for her. I needed something to clear my mind, something productive, something I could control. But when I went to put away some old paperwork in our closet, I noticed something strange. Rachel had a small box tucked in the back corner, hidden beneath a stack of scarves. I wouldn't have thought much of it, except she never hid anything. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach as I pulled it out and lifted the lid. Inside was a neatly wrapped gift, an expensive-looking watch, still in its case, and a card. Can't wait to see you in New Orleans. The handwriting wasn't hers. I felt the blood drain from my face as I stared at the words. My pulse pounded in my ears, my fingers tightening around the card. I sat down slowly, inhaling through my nose, trying to process what I was seeing. She was cheating, or she was about to. I had suspected for a long time that Rachel didn't see me as an equal. But this was something else entirely. I closed the box, exhaling shakily. There was no rush to confront her, no burst of rage, because Rachel had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had underestimated me, and now she was going to regret it. I placed the box back exactly as I found it, down to the angle of the scarves covering it. My hands were steady, my breathing was even, but inside something had shifted. Rachel had been chipping away at me for years, belittling me, dismissing me, making me feel like I was lucky to be with her. Now, I finally understood why. She wasn't just drifting away emotionally. She was justifying what she had already decided to do. This wasn't some fleeting temptation. She had planned this, booked a trip, arranged a gift, told another man that she couldn't wait to see him. And yet, the night before, she had looked me in the eye and acted like I was the problem. I sat in the quiet house for a long time, staring at the floor, listening to the faint ticking of the wall clock. The old me, the man I had been before, might have confronted her immediately, might have let the rage take over, demanded answers, gotten sucked into the endless cycle of excuses and gaslighting. But I wasn't that man anymore. Rachel thought she had control, thought she was the one making the choices, the one pulling the strings. She had no idea that she had already lost. The first thing I did was check her travel arrangements. Rachel was meticulous when it came to work trips. She had an entire folder in our shared email account for travel confirmations, itineraries, and receipts. She always assumed I never paid attention to it. She was right. Until now. Her flight was booked for Friday morning, nonstop to New Orleans. Hotel reservation confirmed at a luxury resort under her company's corporate account. I opened a separate tab and logged into the hotel website, inputting her confirmation number. Then, I scrolled down to modify reservation. Rachel had booked a standard king suite. I upgraded it. Not for her. For me. A honeymoon suite, complete with a private balcony, champagne on arrival, and a romantic dinner package. All under my name. Then, I canceled her original booking entirely. Let her find that out the hard way. The second thing I did was text Megan. Megan and Rachel have been best friends for years, but unlike Rachel, Megan had always treated me like a real person. And lately, I had noticed a shift. Megan had been distant from Rachel, quieter, less enthusiastic about their usual gossip sessions. It wasn't hard to guess why. Rachel's arrogance had finally pushed her away, too. Me? Hey, got a minute to talk? Megan responded almost immediately. Megan, of course. Everything okay? I smirked at the irony of the question. Me? I need a favor. A big one. A few minutes later, Megan and I were on a call. I told her everything. Rachel's trip, the hidden gift, the modified hotel booking. Megan let out a low whistle. Wow, I knew she was selfish, but I didn't think she'd be this reckless. I leaned back in my chair. She thinks I'm too weak to do anything about it. Megan was silent for a moment. Then she said, what's your plan? I need a +1 for the honeymoon suite, I said, keeping my voice casual. Megan laughed, not the forced kind, but the genuine, I can't believe this kind. You want me to come with you? You are recently divorced, I pointed out. And let's be honest, you've been done with Rachel's nonsense for a while now. She hummed thoughtfully. I could use a vacation. So, is that a yes? Megan grinned through the phone. Oh, Ethan, that's a hell yes. That night, I watched Rachel pack. She was humming to herself, completely unaware that I had already unraveled her entire plan. I leaned against the doorframe. Excited for New Orleans? She barely glanced up. Yeah, it'll be good to get away for a few days. I nodded, hiding my smirk. Yeah, it really will. Rachel arrived at the hotel Friday afternoon. Megan and I got there first. The moment Rachel walked up to the front desk, she was already irritated. I could see it in the way she adjusted the strap of her purse, the slight huff she gave when the receptionist typed something into the system. Then, confusion. I'm sorry, ma'am, the receptionist said, her voice polite but firm. We don't have a reservation under your name. Rachel frowned. That's impossible. It should be under Rachel Caldwell. The receptionist checked again. I don't see a reservation for that name. Rachel's patience was wearing thin. Well, check under my company's name. It was booked through their corporate account. The receptionist typed again, then gave her an apologetic look. I see a reservation that was canceled. Do you have a confirmation email for the new booking? Rachel's nostrils flared. New booking? I didn't make a new booking. The receptionist hesitated. Then, I'm not sure what to tell you, ma'am. Rachel exhaled sharply, pulling out her phone, likely to call her assistant or her company's travel rep. And that was when I made my entrance. I stepped into the lobby with Megan on my arm, handing my ID to the second receptionist. Checking in. It should be under Ethan Caldwell. Honeymoon suite. Rachel's head snapped up so fast I thought she might get whiplash. Her eyes widened as she took us in, Megan in a sleek dress, me looking relaxed, completely unbothered. The receptionist smiled. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell. Your suite is ready. Champagne is waiting for you upstairs." Rachel's lips parted, pure shock flashing across her face. "What the hell is this?" I turned to her, feigning surprise. "Oh, Rachel, didn't expect to see you here." She took a step forward, her voice rising. "You cancel my reservation?" I raised an eyebrow. "Technically, I modified it, then booked something better." I turned to Megan, smirking, because she deserves it. Rachel's face turned red. "Are you kidding me? You think this is funny?" I gave her a slow, deliberate once-over. "I think it's fitting." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice, so only she could hear. "You were so excited for new experiences, Rachel. So I figured I'd have one too." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she was the one left speechless. The receptionist handed me my room key. "Enjoy your stay, Mr. Caldwell." I smiled, draping an arm around Megan's waist. "Oh, we will." Rachel let out a strangled noise somewhere between a scream and a frustrated growl. I turned back one last time, watching her stand there, completely humiliated, with nowhere to go. Then, I walked toward the elevator without a single ounce of regret. Rachel had planned for a weekend of adventure. She just didn't expect me to be the one having it. The elevator doors closed behind us, muffling the chaos Rachel was no doubt unleashing at the front desk. I let out a slow breath, finally letting the satisfaction settle in. Megan, standing beside me, let out a small laugh, shaking her head. I don't think I've ever seen her that mad. I smirked. She thought she was in control. She thought she had me figured out. Megan leaned against the elevator wall, crossing her arms. She played stupid games. Now she's winning stupid prizes. I chuckled, running a hand through my hair. "You sure you're okay with this?" "I mean, I know you and Rachel were being the key word," Megan cut in. "You know, I've been done with her for a while. She uses people, Ethan. You more than anyone." I nodded. I had spent years making excuses for Rachel, ignoring the way she treated people, convincing myself that was just who she was. But Megan was right. She had never respected me. She had needed me to be her safety net, her stability, her dependable little husband. But now that safety net was gone, the elevator chimed, and the doors slid open, revealing the luxurious top floor. The suite was everything you'd expect in a honeymoon package. Plush furniture, a massive bed, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A bottle of champagne sat chilling on a small table, alongside a handwritten note welcoming Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. Megan walked over and popped the bottle open, pouring 2 glasses. She handed me one, raising an eyebrow. "To new experiences?" I clinked my glass against hers. "To Rachel learning what consequences feel like." We drank, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Light. Like the weight I had been carrying for years had finally started to lift. Meanwhile, Rachel was still downstairs. I had half expected her to show up at our door, to demand an explanation, to try and salvage whatever was left of her ego. But she didn't. And that was when I realized the truth. Rachel wasn't just angry. She was panicking, because for once, she had been outplayed. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. "She's too proud to text," Megan mused, flopping onto the couch. "She's probably pacing outside, trying to figure out her next move." I smirked. Let her. Downstairs, Rachel was in damage control mode. She had stormed out of the hotel, phone in hand, frantically calling every number she could think of. Her company's travel department couldn't help her. She had no active reservation. Her assistant was useless. There were no last-minute openings anywhere close by. And the man she had planned to meet? He wasn't answering. I knew that because I had sent him a message earlier that morning from Rachel's phone. "Rachel, can't make it this weekend." Something came up. Then, for good measure, I had blocked his number. By the time Rachel realized what had happened, it was too late. She had burned her marriage for a fling that would never happen. And now, she had nowhere to go. The next morning, Megan and I had breakfast in bed, flipping through channels, laughing at some terrible reality show. It was easy, comfortable. Then my phone buzzed. "Rachel." I let it ring. Megan glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. You gonna answer? I exhaled, debating it. Then, finally, I picked up. Rachel. She was silent for a moment. Then, where are you? I sipped my coffee. Enjoy my weekend. Her breath hitched. You think this is funny? I set my mug down, keeping my voice calm. No, Rachel. I think it's ironic. You planned a weekend of excitement, but now you're the one sitting alone. How does it feel? She let out a shaky breath. Ethan, we need to talk. I smiled. No, you need to think about the choices you made, the way you treated me, the way you thought I'd always be there no matter what. She swallowed audibly. I cut her off. Rachel, I'm done. Silence. Then, she whispered, you don't mean that. I let the weight of my words settle in. I do. Then I hung up. Rachel had made me feel replaceable for years. Now, she was the one left behind. I turned my phone off and set it on the nightstand, letting the silence settle in. The old me, the man who would have spent hours agonizing over Rachel's words, trying to figure out how to fix things, was gone. I didn't owe her anything. Not a conversation, not an explanation, and definitely not another chance. Megan watched me carefully, swirling her coffee. How do you feel? I leaned back against the pillows, exhaling slowly, like I finally got out of a burning house. She smirked, and here I thought I was just your plus one for revenge. Ich glänzte her. You were more than that, Megan. You were the first person in a long time who reminded me I deserved better. Megan held my gaze for a moment, then nodded, a knowing smile playing at her lips. Rachel, meanwhile, was spiraling. I didn't hear from her again that day, but I knew she wasn't just letting it go. Rachel wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was likely pacing in our house, rehearsing her next move, crafting the perfect combination of anger and guilt to pull me back in. The thought used to scare me. Now it almost amused me. When Megan and I left the hotel the next morning, I half expected Rachel to be waiting outside, arms crossed, demanding answers. But there was nothing. No texts, no voicemails, not even a passive-aggressive email. That was how I knew she was planning something bigger. And I was right. When I got home later that evening, the house was eerily quiet. Rachel wasn't in the kitchen, wasn't in the living room. For a moment, I thought maybe she had gone out. Maybe I'd have a few hours of peace before the inevitable confrontation. Then, I walked into the bedroom. Rachel was sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes red, an empty wine glass in her hand. I didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't give her the satisfaction of thinking this meant something. She looked up at me, voice small. So that's it? You humiliate me, spend the weekend with her, and now you just come home like nothing happened. I set my bag down. You don't get to play the victim, Rachel. She let out a short, bitter laugh. The victim? You sabotaged my trip. I what? I cut in, stepping closer. I stopped you from cheating? I made sure you felt exactly how you made me feel for years. Her jaw tightened. I was honest with you. I scoffed. Right. You didn't even try to hide it. You looked me in the eye and told me you were going to sleep with someone else. Like I was supposed to just accept that. She inhaled sharply, standing up. You don't understand, Ethan. I laughed under my breath. Oh, I understand perfectly. You wanted me to feel powerless. You wanted me to know you could do whatever you wanted and I'd never leave. That I'd always be your backup, your safety net. Rachel's face twisted, her usual confidence cracking. You twisted this whole thing. I just needed something different. It wasn't about you. I raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to make it better? She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. Rachel, I spent years thinking I wasn't enough for you. That maybe if I was more exciting, more ambitious, more whatever, you'd actually look at me the way you used to. But I finally get it now. I met her eyes. It was never about me. It was about you. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Ethan, I'm done. She flinched like I had slapped her. You don't mean that? I nodded toward the closet. I packed a bag before I left. I'm not staying here. Panic flashed across her face. So what? You're just going to walk away? After everything? I stepped toward the door. No, Rachel. You walked away first. And this time I wasn't following. I walked out of that house without looking back. I expected Rachel to chase after me, to yell, to demand I stay and fight. But she didn't. Maybe she was still too stunned. Maybe she was already planning her next move. I didn't care. I drove to a hotel across town, checked in, and dropped my bag onto the bed. It was strange how quiet everything felt. No tension humming beneath the surface. No waiting for the next dismissive comment. The next jab, disguised as a joke. Just silence. I pulled out my phone. Jacob. Ready when you are. Jacob was the best divorce attorney I knew. A colleague, a friend. I had already told him what was happening. Now, it was time to make it official. Me, let's file. I half expected to feel something, guilt, regret, hesitation. But I didn't. Rachel had been gone long before this. I was just the last one to admit it. The next day, I had the papers drawn up. I didn't ask for anything, just a clean break. No alimony, no drawn-out battle. Rachel had always loved power plays, but I wasn't giving her the chance. I wanted out, and I wanted out fast. I had them delivered to her office. I wanted her to receive them somewhere public, somewhere she couldn't scream and throw things, somewhere she'd have to keep that composed, polished image intact. Jacob called me a few hours later. She got them. I exhaled. And? He chuckled. She called me within 5 minutes. Demanded to know if you were serious. I smirked. What did you say? Told her you've never been more serious in your life. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally in control. Rachel tried to reach me that night. First with a text. Rachel, Ethan, we need to talk. I ignored it. Then another. Rachel, this is ridiculous. You can't just end a marriage over one bad moment. I let out a humorless laugh. One bad moment? That was how she was spinning it? I didn't respond. The call started next. I let them go to voicemail. By the time she tried again the next morning, I blocked her number. 2 days later, I got a call from Jacob. She's lawyered up. I wasn't surprised. Rachel wasn't the type to accept consequences quietly. She's contesting? I asked. She's trying to. Wants to negotiate. Probably thinks she can talk you into changing your mind. I smirked. Let her try. The first divorce meeting was scheduled for Friday. Rachel walked into the conference room looking composed, professional, like she was trying to prove she was still in control. But the moment she sat across from me, I saw it. The crack in her facade. She wasn't in control anymore. Her lawyer started with the usual pleasantries. Rachel would like to discuss a fair division of assets. Jacob leaned back, casual. Ethan already outlined his terms. He's not asking for anything. Just a clean break. Rachel's jaw tightened. That's not fair. I raised an eyebrow. Fair. She turned to me, her expression hard. You don't just get to walk away like this. We build a life together. I let out a slow breath. I built a life, Rachel. You just lived in it. Her lawyer cleared his throat. Rachel is willing to negotiate financial support. Jacob snorted. Support? For what? Rachel's lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected me to call her bluff so quickly. Jacob flipped through the paperwork. Ethan has all the financial records. He knows you make more than him. He also knows about the fraudulent expenses. Would you like to bring those into discussion? Rachel's face went pale. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. That won't be necessary. I tilted my head. So what's left to talk about? Rachel inhaled sharply. Ethan, I cut her off. You spent years making me feel like I was lucky to have you. Like I was some burden you had to carry. But look where we are now. You're the one trying to negotiate, and I'm the one who doesn't need a damn thing from you. Her hands curled into fists. You love me. I exhaled. I did. I met her eyes. But you didn't. Her mouth opened slightly, but she had no words. Jacob leaned forward. So, Rachel, are you signing today, or do we drag this into court? She stared at me for a long time, like she was searching for some version of me that still existed, the man who would have caved, who would have let her talk her way out of this. But I wasn't that man anymore. Finally, she looked away. I'll sign. And just like that, it was over. When I walked out of that room, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. The ink on Rachel's signature had barely dried before I walked out of that office without a second glance. I had spent years being tied to her, trapped in a marriage that felt more like a performance than a partnership. Now, the chains were broken. The weight was gone. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I could finally breathe. I didn't go back to the hotel that night. I didn't go out and celebrate. I just drove. The city blurred past me. Neon signs flickering, people rushing in and out of restaurants and bars, all caught up in their own worlds. I wasn't part of Rachel's world anymore, and that realization didn't bring sadness. It brought relief. I had been fighting so long to keep something that had never really been mine. My phone buzzed beside me. Megan. So, how does it feel to be a free man? I smirked, shaking my head. Me, quiet. Megan, good quiet? Or, I need a drink, quiet? I thought about that for a second before replying. Me, come over and find out. Megan showed up half an hour later, a bottle of whiskey in one hand and takeout in the other. She kicked off her shoes, sat on my couch, and poured us each a drink. So, tell me, she said, leaning back. Did she cry? I chuckled. She looked like she wanted to. Megan lifted her glass. Cheers to that. I clinked mine against hers, taking a slow sip. It's funny, I said after a moment. I always thought divorce would feel like failure, like I had lost something. I exhaled. But now it feels like I won. Megan smirked. Because you did. We ate in comfortable silence, the hum of the city outside filling the space. Megan was easy to be around. No pretense, no mind games. Just real. It was a stark contrast to what I'd lived with for years. After a while, she glanced over at me. So what's next? That was the question, wasn't it? Rachel had consumed so much of my life. Her career, her ambitions, her endless need for control. Without that, I had to figure out what I wanted. I set my glass down, leaning back. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time, I actually get to decide. Megan smiled. That's the best part. Rachel, on the other hand, wasn't handling things as well. Over the next few weeks, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she wasn't doing great. She had always been someone who needed to be admired, to be the one in control. But now, people were talking not just about the divorce, but about the truth behind it. Word had spread. She wasn't the wronged wife. She wasn't the strong, independent woman leaving behind a weak husband. People knew about the trip, about the way she had treated me, about how, in the end, she had been the one left behind. She tried to spin the story, of course. Rachel was never one to admit defeat. But this time, no one was buying it. I wasn't buying it. I had spent years thinking that if I just tried harder, if I just proved myself, Rachel would finally see me as enough. But now I didn't care what she saw. I was finally seeing myself. And for once I liked what I saw. Rachel's downfall happened faster than I expected. It started as whispers among our old social circle. Murmurs passed between colleagues and mutual friends. People had always admired her ambition, her confidence, the way she carried herself like she was untouchable. But now they saw the cracks. At first, she acted like nothing had changed. She still attended industry events, still flashed that perfect smile, still played the part of the successful marketing director. But the problem with being on top was that the fall was always harder. And she was falling. It turned out people had started to put things together. The trip to New Orleans, the sudden divorce, the way I had walked away without looking back. And then someone spilled the truth. I didn't know who it was. Maybe Megan. Maybe one of Rachel's former friends who had finally seen her for what she was. Maybe just someone who had overheard the wrong conversation at the right time. But the story got out. Rachel had cheated, or at least had planned to. She had admitted it to me outright, had assumed I'd just accept it, had treated me like I was too weak to do anything about it. People loved a scandal, especially one that involved someone who had always acted like they were better than everyone else. The respect she had once commanded started to fade. Colleagues who once flocked to her now kept their distance. Professional opportunities dried up. Even the man she had intended to spend her weekend with in New Orleans, gone. He hadn't even tried to contact her. Rachel had built her life on being admired, on being in control. Now, she had neither. I should have felt bad. I didn't. One afternoon, Megan texted me a screenshot from social media. Megan, thought you'd enjoy this. It was a post from one of Rachel's former coworkers. Funny how some people love to preach about loyalty and success until the truth comes out. Guess karma moves faster than we thought. The comments were brutal. People knew. Rachel hadn't just lost her marriage. She had lost everything. I exhaled, setting my phone down, letting the satisfaction settle in. This wasn't revenge. This was just justice. A few days later, Rachel reached out. Not through text. Not through a call. She emailed me. Rachel, we need to talk. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. She had spent years making me feel like I was disposable. Now, she was the one reaching out. The one hoping for a second chance. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Rachel had made her choices. Now, she was finally facing the consequences. And I was finally free. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.